King Canute. He was the King of England from 1016 until 1035, and from 1019 then also the King of Denmark, and 1028 onwards also the King of Norway. His father was the King Sven Forkbeard, a Viking king, his mother Gunhild. And his predecessor in England was Ethelred II. He then died, and then King Canute was having severe battles with the son of Ethelred II, Edmund Ironside, for who becomes the king on the throne. So Ethelred II dies, has a son who was already fighting against him. King Canute had invaded in 1015 England, and his son, Edmund Ironside, son of Ethelred II, was fighting against King Canute. The people wasn't really seeing the support of Ethelred the Unready to his son Edmund Ironside against the invading Vikings under King Canute. They saw him as a bit as a rebel, Edmund Ironside. And Ethelred the Unready, by the way, has the byname the Unready because he wasn't really decisive on how to deal with the Danes. He tried to pay the money that they weren't doing attacks and so on. He also attacked them, ordered massacres, was getting the money, so he wasn't really good how to prepare with them. Now then, in 1015, King Canute invades. His son Edmund Ironside fights against him. 1016, Ethelred the Unready dies. Edmund Ironside and King Canute fighting for who is leading now England. They're having severe battles. In the Battle of Allington in Essex, where then King Canute defeats Edmund Ironside, they meet at the Isle of Ailmay in the River Seine River Severn in the middle, on an island, and they agree on sharing the kingdom. Edmund Ironside is murdered, and Canute becomes the whole ruler of England. And he rules, and he encourages Christianity, and he appoints Saxon and Danish people to become priests. And he is treating Danes and Saxons equally. And he marries Elgiva. With her he has Harold Harefoot as a son. And he marries Emma. With her he has Hafagnud as a son. Both wives, if I understand it correctly, were married to Ethelred the Unready. Now, and these two sons, when after King Canute had died, battling who becomes the king. They even die in 1040 and 1042. And now it goes then a bit on, and it becomes, then the next person becomes Edward the Confessor, becomes the next king. Edward the Confessor is also a son of Ethelred II, if I'm correctly. And now Edward the Confessor then at one time is then in exile in the Normandy, and where he promises in return for the helping of the Duke of Normandy, him to be the next king of England. They're talking about William the Conqueror. Then Edward the Confessor goes back to England, and he changes his mind, and he decides to give now Harold of Wessex the kingdom. King Canute had split up the country into 4 earldoms, into Wessex and Northumbria and Mercia and East Anglia. What happens now? Duke of Normandy, William the Conqueror, is not so happy that he is not getting what was him promised, the kingdom of England, after Edward the Confessor had died, the son of Ethelred the Unready. And he invades England, defeats them in the Battle of Hastings in 1066, Harold the Saxon king. Now, and somewhere in between is the story of King Canute. And that is according to the history of the kings and queens of England and Scotland, written by Edmund Swinglehurst on the pages 22 and 23. Hi and welcome. I'm trying to learn medieval studies, today King Canute, and after we've done it, we're going to do stretching, and if you participate in the stretching, then it's very obvious. King Canute, King of England from 1016 until 1035. Born in 995, the parents are King Sven, so the Viking king, Sven Forkbeard, King Sven and Gunhilda of Poland. Ascended the throne on the 30th November 1016, crown possible St. Paul's Cathedral, London, 1017. Authority King of England and Denmark and Norway. Married Elgiva, daughter of the Ealdorman of Deira, never consecrated, I don't know what it means, and second Emma of Normandy, widow of Ethelred II. Children with Elgiva, 2 sons, Harold Harefoot and also Sven, and with Emma, one son, Harfer Canute, and 2 daughters, and several illegitimate children. Died Shaftesbury, 12 November 1035. Buried Winchester Cathedral. On the death of King Ethelred the Unready, who gained his name from playing a waiting game with the Danes, including bribing them with money to stop their raids, there were 2 rivals for the throne. Canute, who was Danish, and Edmund Ironside the Saxon. After several fierce battles, the 2 claimants agreed to a peaceful settlement by sharing the kingdom between them. King Ethelred the Unready was on the throne, and he was bribing, giving the Vikings or the Danes money so that they wouldn't do their raids, but they just grew in power, and he also tried to fight them and so on, but it didn't work out, and at the end of the day the Danes took the throne, and King Canute was his successor, and the Danish king was on the throne in England. I think that is the short form of what is happening. And now there were now 2 people fighting for who becomes now the successor of who? Of Ethelred the Unready. And that was Canute, who was Danish, and Edmund Ironside the Saxon. So it didn't went directly to the Danish king. It was open, and there was the Danish Canute and the Saxon Edmund Ironside, so the English Saxon Edmund Ironside fighting. And they agreed and made an agreement, sharing the kingdom, but the Saxon Ironside died soon afterwards, leaving Canute as sole king. Canute married Emma of Normandy and divided his kingdom into 4 earldoms: Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, and Wessex. I am pretty sure we're talking about the same Emma, widow of Ethelred II, as was Ethelred the Unready, who was married to Emma, daughter of the Duke of Normandy. We're going to stay awake on that. We don't know exactly if it is the same Emma who was married to Ethelred the Unready. We're saying a widow of Ethelred II. So the kingdom was divided into 4 earldoms: Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, and Wessex. By this means he hoped to have 4 loyal lords guarding his own and the interests of England as a united country. A religious man who also understood the usefulness of the church, Canute encouraged the spread of Christianity and appointed both Saxon and Danish priests to positions of trust and authority. So he was splitting up the country into 4 earldoms, trusting these 4 earls and hoping that they would all work together and rule the country in his interests. And he also used the Christian church and Christianity, which was flourishing, and he encouraged the spread of Christianity, and he appointed Saxon and Danish priests, but both Christians, I think, in positions of trust and authority. In 1027, he attended the coronation of the Pope in Rome, which indicates the degree of his acceptance by the center of universal spiritual power and, therefore, by the church in his own country. So he went from England to Rome, and that indicates the degree of his acceptance by the center of universal spiritual power and, therefore, by the church in his own country. And that is how high the church was seen by him in his country. He treated both Saxon and Danes equally and tried to make laws that would be acceptable to both sides. On his death, much of his work was undone as his sons Hereford and Harfer Canute competed for the kingship. The 2 brothers died in 1040 and 1042 and were succeeded by Edward the Confessor, son of Ethelred II, but not Ethelred with A written. We don't know who it is. Then Edward married Edith. Which Edward? Some Edward. Edith married Edith, whoever that is, the daughter of Goodwill, Earl of Wessex. He established a connection that was to prove troublesome. Okay. King Canute tried to unify the country, making laws acceptable by Danes and Saxons, and appointing also Danes and Saxons into Christian offices. But when he died, when his two sons Hereford and Hafercanute were competing for the kingship, but they both died. And then the successor was Edward the Confessor, and he married the daughter of the Earl of Wessex. But this connection was troublesome. Having quarrelled with Goodwine, I think now the father, and exiled the family, Edward promised his succession to the Duke of Normandy. He later changed his mind and supported the cause of Harold of Wessex to the English crown. This was, however, unacceptable to William of Normandy, who in 1066 prepared to claim his rights. Why does William of Normandy think he has the rights to the throne in England? Let's go one in front. Battle of Hastings. William I, Duke of Normandy, invaded England on the 20th September 1066 because Edward the Confessor had drawn back from his promise to give William the English crown on his death. Why had he promised William to become? Having quarrelled with Goodwine, the Earl of Wessex, and exiled the family, I think, of Wessex, Edward promised his succession to the Duke of Normandy. Why? The meeting of we have the idea to read all this a few pages in front and then to go back, so already you understand me a bit more. The meeting of Edmund Ironside and Canute on the Isle of Ely in 1016. When Canute invaded England in 1015, Edmund led the fighting against him. However, the people apparently felt that he was a rebel against his father, Ethelred the Unready, for he found it hard to gain a following without his father's aid. It was at least the part about Edmund Ironside and Canute fighting, but Edmund Ironside died, and then King Canute was the lone ruler. The timeline of the reign, 1060 to 1035. 1060. Ethelred dies. I think we're talking about Ethelred the Unready. And his son Edmund II, which is also Edmund Ironside, and King Canute fight for the kingdom. At the Battle of Ashington in Essex, Canute defeats Edmund, and they agree to divide the kingdom into two. Canute controlled the north and Edmund the south. Edmund is murdered. Sorry, did not die, he was murdered. Edmund is murdered and Canute is chosen to rule as king of all England. Canute marries Emma of Normandy, the widow of Ethelred II, written with an E, so it's not Ethelred the Unready. Canute divides England into four earldoms: Northumbria, Wessex, Mercia, and East Anglia. 1020, Lything dies and is succeeded by Ethelnoth as Archbishop of Canterbury. William the Conqueror is born in Normandy, 1027. Canute makes a pilgrimage to Rome to demonstrate his alliance with the Church and attends the coronation of the Pope. 1028, in addition to his existing kingdoms, Canute becomes king of Norway. 1035, Canute dies at the age of 40 and his huge North European empire disintegrates. Okay, we're gonna read on in the next part with Battle of Hastings and then probably also William I, its own page. And I think that we understand 2 or 3 parts better explained here. That means if you were here for medieval studies, you can go to the next part of medieval studies where we will continue with the Battle of Hastings. If you stay here and participate in the stretching this video. Feet are staying together, Augen für Toes, the other toes, here, and episode. And now again in with the feet. This time stay down with the legs, with the knees. Stay in the knees. And stay good and still, breathe in the arms up. And breathe out and go to the side. Again in. Out to the other side. In. Hold the hands down and slide with one hand the leg down. Breathe in. Hold one arm over. Breathe in and open the ribcage. Out and back. Again in. Out one hand slides down the leg. The other shoulder stays down. Breathe in. Out one arm over. Breathe in and open rib cage. Out and back. Have feet standing together. Breathe in the arms up. And breathe out one hand down and reach. In and up. Out the other hand down and reach. In and up. Out both down. Good standing and shoulder circles. Back, up, in front and down. And backwards. Down. Back, down. And breathe in the shoulders up. Out is before down. In and up. Out and down. Breathe in the arms up. And reach always with one arm high up. Pretend to take an apple hanging high on an apple branch. To turn it a bit around and then to rip it down. And the legs is with them wide apart, the arms to the sides, breathe in. And out, go over to one side. Again in. Out to the other side. In. And out, lean onto the knees. Breathe again in. And out, one shoulder in front. In and back. Out the other one in front. In and back. And out and hanging down. Breathe again in. And out over to one leg. Breathe in. Out to the other side. Breathe again in. Out and then. Breathe again in. And out, come slowly around, back up, back into the top of backwards. And breathe in the arms up. Come down, breathe in down. And out. Throw the shoulder blades together. In and up. Up, down. In and up. And out, throw the shoulder blades together. In and up. Out. Breathe in and close my legs. And breathe again out. It's also stretching. I forgot to fix it. I think very much. And at the next time.